Kieran. So I'm going to be joined by my Celtic cousin, Robbie Nelson, who's going to get up in a moment. But just before he does, I'm just going to introduce maybe some market facts about deploying data centers at the edge. So we're going to compare the Middle East probably with Europe during the conversation. It's going to be very organic. That's kind of the relaxed nature of the next 20 minutes. But what we're hoping to get out of that is the barriers to deployment. From Europe to the Middle East, we're looking at the traditional approach, how that compares with modular, and we're going to look at the vision as well. That's the main points we're looking to get out of the next couple of minutes. So without further ado, Robbie Nelson.
Right, how are we doing?
So, Robbie, first off terms, the basics, I suppose. Tell me what, define the edge in your terms in relation to modular.
Yeah, so for us, edge is decentralized computing, trying to process the data closer to the customer, to where the data is generated, to have lower latency. Typically, there's smaller capacity sites ranging from a couple hundred kilowatts up into a few megawatts. I think the interesting thing about the edge is that slightly smaller footprint lends itself to modular construction quite easily.
Very good, very good. So listen, we're just going to get into the bones and from the bones of it to the meat of it now, I suppose, and we're going to dive in, modular. Tell me about modular and the landscape that it is at the moment versus the kind of the barriers. We're going to have a very fluid kind of conversation about this and my experience as well, coming from Microsoft. I've seen many challenges in Microsoft. We spent 2 years on a pilot project only for someone to kind of pop in at the last minute to say, look, listen, we want to go traditional. Why is modular the driver, and how do we get to that 16 billion market in Europe by 2030, and how do we get to the 18-19% growth year on year in the Middle East?
I think for modular, what grabs the headlines, what gets everybody's attention is the potential speed of deployment. So yesterday and today, the speakers have spoken about that time to market, being able to generate revenue, be able to deploy your business quicker. So modular always grabs the headlines about time, but it's about more than that. There's more benefits that come along with it. Yes, there's the opportunity to be faster. There's the opportunity to be better. Working in a controlled environment means the quality can increase. There's other benefits in safety, was mentioned yesterday. So de-risking the site, taking the work, working at height away, hot works, that sort of thing into a workshop is making it safer for these buildings to be deployed. And then the flexibility element is a big benefit also, deploying what you need.
Okay, so let us kind of dig deeper on the lead times and the advantages of that and cost. Where are you seeing that at the moment in comparison, and what are the requirements from the clients? Is it a very aggressive market? Have you seen times when they say, well, is it really worth it from a modular building perspective? Would we not be better? The GC loves to rock up with the cement trucks and the lorries and pour concrete and stick build. What is the main driver for us to get that over the line?
Well, as I said, all the clients looking at modular as a construction methodology are looking at that time. Taking the production off-site allows a lot of the traditional dependencies you mentioned, like doing stick build with concrete pour. Those dependencies are removed. If you go to a steel volumetric module, that can be being produced off-site in parallel to, for example, the ground improvement, substructure, utilities happening on-site. So that's where the real benefit is, the real saving that can improve the lead times.
And a few weeks ago, I seen you were in GQ magazine. I think it was in the Middle East, maybe. I did see something. And you had Lego blocks in your hand. So there is the perception, I suppose. And I experienced that too with Microsoft, where the delivery team expected us to rock up with the trucks, just drop them out of the sky, and we're gone. Okay, and the reality is that is not the case. So I feel, and just based on your experience as well, Robbie, how understanding is, yes, they understand modular is to a point, but do we have to educate the market and the clients a little bit more?
There's a lot of education and experience to go into it. Like for modular, there's that perception that your Lego blocks will arrive on site, you can click them together in an afternoon, and by the next morning you're up and running. So there's a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of early engagement that has to go into that. And that's part of what requires the mind shift or the change in mindset from not only the client but the whole project team. So that effort really has to go into a lot more detail a lot earlier in the project to try and reduce that site time. And obviously looking at the size of your modular building, the design of it, the repeatability of it, and how many connections you have on site is really what gives you the most efficiency to deploy it on site in the shortest time.
Yeah, in my experience, there was always a reluctance to steer us in a different way because commercially, it's transferring from the traditional site-based boots on the ground back to a very more structured, safe environment within the confines of a factory. But also with that, there is a little bit of a transition commercially from one element of the traditional builder to the new modular landscape. Yeah. Have you experienced that as well?
Yeah, we have experiences with that, positively and not so positively. So sometimes trying to keep a one-size-fits-all traditional contract commercially and apply it to a modular build, it's not always the best approach because we have different drivers, we have different constraints. You know, cash flow in a project will run in a different manner. So it's about, you know, it's something new, although modular is not a terribly new concept, but the way in which it's managed, the way in which it's applied, the way in which the contracts are structured should all be taken into account into a more, you know, upfront, front-loaded program style.
Okay, so you talk about the one size fits all there, and based from what my learnings in the past is, that is a very difficult, I suppose, animal to maneuver into a standardization. What I would suggest, and I'm not sure you're the same, is that the site acquisition team sometimes really get it wrong. The locations, the geographics, you know, the topography of the site doesn't always allow for modular buildings. Mm-hmm. How do you see that in the Middle East?
We've had some challenging sites in the Middle East in terms of location, but obviously BK Modular, BK Gulf, we're based in the United Arab Emirates. The infrastructure development there is excellent. We have a lot of, all our modular buildings go through road transport. So we have easy reach to pretty much all of the Emirates and then wider into KSA, other parts of the GCC. So yeah, choosing site, making sure it has good road links. You know, we're considering edge data centers. It has to have that utility connection anyway, so you're not going into completely undeveloped areas, but considering the logistics of how you transport your modular building to site, the availability of roads, the widths, the underpasses, overpasses, all has to come into part of the final site selection.
I'm going to push you a little bit further, and this is an industry thing that I've experienced as well on a European basis, is that early engagement. And I had a discussion with a client on a completely different topic this morning. Is it a case that there's a real estate team in some of the hyperscalers, for instance, that are selecting the wrong sites, where we could actually, as an industry, get involved a little bit earlier on that and suggest, because they are actually finding themselves snookered at times as well. So do you think that is something we should look at to try to maneuver?
Yeah, I think it's something that definitely needs to be considered. I think one of the benefits of looking at modular buildings is you do have pre-loaded designs that to get these benefits out can be repeatable. But you know, we talked about the logistic importance of the site selection, but also what we see in the Middle East as well is moving from site to site in terms of ground condition can be very different. So there can be certain areas that require a lot of investigation, a lot of ground improvement, might change your substructure design from, you know, pad footings or a rafting to requiring piling or micro piling. So it really needs to be a holistic view when you choose your location.
Okay, so we touched on logistics there a moment ago, but barriers to the deployment of modular buildings. is something that it's a topic, I suppose. Barriers to data centers in general is a problem, but we were just to focus on that. What are the main barriers overall from a regulatory perspective, from logistical wise, even standards? Where are we with that in the Middle East?
We see different approaches depend on the local authority. There's certain parts have a building system approval process. So when you're looking at modular building as a system, that has to go through its own review, its own validation, and in certain scenarios you need to factor that time in required to go through the regulatory review. So what we try and do is select pre-approved systems, pre-approved materials, and trying to take a hybrid approach to certain scales of buildings, so we can incorporate modular buildings as well as understandable or well-known products or systems.
Yeah, that's something I think that needs probably to improve, definitely in my locality, but in Europe in general, we've become so nearly over-regulated, and it is a topic of discussion throughout all industries at the moment. But as regards standards, what is the expectation from a modular building perspective? Because there's a lack of differentiation, I suppose, in Ireland at times between what a stick build is and what a modular construction is. So, they're not looking at the carbon advantages, the sustainability, the environmental advantages of that. How does the UAE, Saudi Arabia, how does that compare?
So I think in terms of standards, I think modular construction overall, ideally it would have its own fully written, fully applicable standard. The time it takes to develop and a wider understanding of the system, we are complying with the standards that are existing, whether it be for structure, for fire life safety, for electrical standards, the IEC, NFPA standards. They're all what we're incorporating into the modular build at the moment.
Okay, and just to touch back on logistics, it's a big barrier when you're looking for a global rollout and standardization through the industry. Whether it's a road, it's a bridge, it's rail, it's freight, whatever that may be. What are the logistical challenges you're finding in the UAE?
So logistics is a balancing act. It's about getting, ultimately, your logistics is a cost to the project. So it's about getting that right size of block that you can build in the factory. It can be reasonably easy to transport. As I said, we have great road infrastructure in the UAE, in the Middle East, so that's a definite benefit. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the time on site, the more blocks you have to build your building, the more time it will take, the more time it will have to connect. So you have to make that balance based on limiting joints. So we have some projects in the Middle East where our block is 10 meters wide by 30 meters long. So that's a huge logistical effort to transport from the factory to the site. So we're having to make special accommodations for like removing central reservations so the truck doesn't have to go around the corner, it can cut across the highway. That obviously has a cost to it, but there's a benefit in the time for delivery on site. That wouldn't be the solution for every unit, but yeah, the balance is key.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears for a second. What at the moment is the drivers to improve efficiency, the technologies, and I suppose with the theme of this event, the AI kind of impact, that not from a power perspective, but from improving your efficiency as regards a modular construction company?
Yeah, well, as you said, there's been a lot of discussions over the last day about how AI can improve operations. For us as a modular builder, that element of predictive maintenance is definitely a benefit. But as you said, we're also trying to look at how AI can improve our systems, improve our process. So we're looking at AI assistance with capacity planning, AI assistance with design, supply chain management, and productivity. So as well as being a builder of data centers, we can also take the benefit of using that deployment of AI.
Okay, and then just looking outwards, I suppose, from the operations side, what benefits or what technologies are involved from your perspective on that, just to delve into that a little bit more?
So from the operation point of view, it's all about, for us, it's remote monitoring and predictive maintenance. So trying to perceive a fault or perceive an issue before it actually happens, so that piece of equipment can be maintained or fixed before it goes down.
Okay. And then just looking outwards, I suppose, into the future, this is a big one. As I said a few moments ago, we're looking at Europe going from a 6 billion to a 16 billion rapid deployment industry. We're looking at Saudi Arabia, I think year on year, it's 19%, growth, revenue, I think 3 billion by 2030, I believe that's the figure. So what are we looking as we've discussed the acceptance and getting the client to accept that kind of maneuvering from traditional to modular, the rapid deployment. But what does the future really hold for modular?
Well, I think the future for modular is very, very exciting. The sky's the limit, really.
And I'm going to come in on you because there is the plug and play is a massive kind of buzzword. It's not always plug and play, but can we achieve the plug and play scenario?
I think we can. I think we have to perhaps rethink or think outside the box about what our buildings look like and how that incorporates modular. So as I said, reducing the amount of connections you have on site, perhaps looking at slightly larger blocks, that all adds into the plug and play theory. And simple things like when we're looking at connectors for cables. So looking at different industries away from construction or data centers, like the rail industry uses modular pluggable cables for signaling and control. So taking that into our construction, which isn't typically seen, would give us a big benefit in time.
Yeah, and I believe the biggest barrier at the moment, I think everybody here would agree, is that kind of guaranteed performance leaving the factory. That is the biggest barrier, I feel. Do you see a point we can get to that within the next 5 years? Because obviously we're achieving an L3 performance leaving the factory, but can we achieve the ultimate, to nearly zero kind of commissioning on site? Do we foresee that?
I think we could. Again, it would depend on the specific application, but getting the certainty of delivery is definitely something we need to strive towards for modular. So the more testing, the more commissioning that can be done off-site, the better. Again, much like logistics, it becomes a balancing act of what you have to repeat. How much value do you get from fully commissioning off-site to send it on a couple 100-kilometer trip?
Yeah.
You have to take into account the potential vibration or disruption to what's happened. So I think getting that certainty requires the off-site testing, but has to be the right.
So I suppose, like, to kind of summarize that, we're still looking at a global kind of role deployment, but a local adaptation is still always going to be the barrier. We're not going to achieve that within the next 5 years anyway.
Yeah, there's always going to be local adaptation, whether it be for climate, whether it be for authorities, whether it be for ground condition. Obviously, as a manufacturer, we'd like to produce the same unit day in, day out, but that's not practical in terms of where it's going to go. So we have to have that customization and flexibility to make sure that what we're deploying is going to be correct and it's going to do the right job for the customer.
Okay, so I'm going to leave you as our guest with the closing remarks from this very kind of in-depth discussion. What would you say to the operators, the hyperscalers, as an advice from yourself being in the modular industry?
Yeah, well, we touched on it already. For modular, it's all about early engagement. Trying to change that mindset, trying to look at the process a little bit differently, putting in that extra effort, that extra detail right at the front end will pay back tenfold when it comes to the delivery on site.
Okay. Robbie Nelson, thank you.
Thank you very much.